Hi there. Today I'm going to talk about the value of photographically thinking and working in series. The single image has value for recording or documenting, especially in something like news photography. You can pack a lot of information into one image, so it can be really impactful. But if that's all you do, then you are unlikely to ever develop a recognizable visual voice or language that people will see as distinctly yours. The opportunity to develop this opens up when you're thinking broadly about a subject and developing aspects like mood, aesthetic, narrative, and sequencing. It's a bit like opening a door and finding yourself in an empty room. Instead of just thinking about putting one picture up on the wall, suddenly you have to think about how the whole room should look. Then your attention is drawn to how do you create continuity between the photographs within the room. You could go the interior designer route and put a green picture to match the sofa and a red one to match grandma's burgundy quilt. But eventually you'll find that the room starts to look like a toy shop. Sometimes all of these considerations can become overwhelming, but I'll go through the process of developing an essay by looking at how I produced a few photographic series of my own. I seldom shoot short-term essays. Usually I let them develop over time, can be up to 4 years.
They say that the camera never lies, but it can stretch the...
Until the internet and social media began dominating photographic publishing, the series or essay was king or queen. I'll start off with the journalistic essay. This is a story about the survival of the rhino in southern Africa. Poachers can make a fortune supplying the East with a rhino horn aphrodisiac that doesn't work. Immediately when approaching a reportage type story, the photographer needs to think, what does the magazine or book editor want? You must gain a clear idea of how the pictures will be used. Do they usually look for a story that has a linear narrative, or maybe they prefer something more eclectic? Do they usually use 10 pictures or 20 pictures, or do they need 50? Even if they generally only use a maximum of 10, the picture editors will want to stamp their own imprint onto the work by making their selection and choosing how they want it to look. So you have to give the editor and the reader a storyline that they can grab onto. In the case of this story, there were different sub-stories within the broader theme, like poaching, conservation, the sale and hunting of rhinos, and quite a few more. So readers can shift from one topic, get a general feel, and then move on to the next point of interest. I wanted to maintain a sort of National Geographic type of feel. You know, the photo essays that you commonly see in National Geographic. The word fillers is a swear word. You really don't want the editors or the viewers to view any of your images as fillers. If you have them in your final selection, then you know that you need to go back out and work a bit harder. Your aim is always to be as eloquent as possible. You aren't writing War and Peace. Rather, you're trying to say as much as possible in a limited number of photographs. More like a poet approaching their theme. In this case, I was working with a writer, so it became important to link the focus of the text with that of the photographs. If one is working on a personal project, then a whole number of options open up to you. So many, in fact, that you might become swamped by choice, so you'll end up actually doing nothing at all. The trick is to set boundaries, because these will give you structure. But also, they'll create space that you can work more freely within. It sounds contradictory to say that adding restrictions liberates your creativity. But by setting a number of parameters, you are freeing your mind to explore more fully within that space. I came across these two dogs while on a Christmas holiday vacation at a beach called Pringle Bay near Cape Town. I noticed that they were constantly moving around the beach doing different dog activities. And every now and again they would jump about with people on a raised sandbank. But they would soon get bored and head off and do other things. I chose this particular doggy activity because I wanted to capture as many weird jumping combinations as I could. By isolating the dogs against a fairly featureless background, all of the viewer's attention becomes directed at the antics of the dogs. Once I had set the parameters, I was free just to focus on capturing the exact moments that I wanted. The look of each of these images is very similar, so immediately one recognizes continuity between them. The fact that the series was shot in black and white contributes to evening out the background. If the images were in color, then a blue sky would have been another distraction. Let's say you're thinking of doing a portrait series. The subject could be broad, you could look at people all over the world that have a particular look and feel, or you could focus on a group of people that are defined by what they do or who they are, or any other determining factor. This selection of images comes from a project called Showtime and focuses on people attending agricultural shows throughout South Africa. Like farming communities all over the world, what you see is what you get. There's generally no falseness or affectation with these people. So I wanted to mirror this aspect of straightforwardness. I kept all of the backgrounds plain and allowed the subjects to become comfortable within the space. I also standardized the lighting to one large softbox that was placed fairly straight on. I had no idea what space I would be assigned at each location that I went to. So I had to devise a look and approach that was both simple and flexible. All of my attention was focused on my interaction with the subject, waiting for a moment when their posture and expression would reveal something of their personality. The personal essay or series doesn't have to illustrate a particular subject. It could be about an idea or a feeling or even a philosophy. In this long-term essay called Scratching the Surface, I was interested in capturing how it felt when I came across structures that were built without any aesthetic consideration. In the same way that Robert Adams and his new topographic friends became repelled by the unchecked urban expansion in the States, I noticed that I would get a hollow feeling in my stomach when I saw structures that reveal no awareness within the architects and planners about the people who actually live in these spaces. In South Africa, in the richer sectors, it doesn't seem to affect the aesthetic decisions that are made. There are also so many social issues to deal with, and the response is generally unconsidered, incoherent, and corrupted by self-interest. This type of series is very different from a journalistic essay, which is often very defined. When you're dealing with a subject that's more abstract, you have to let the project evolve. It becomes more of a process of discovery and self-discovery. You have to play with your own creativity, alternatively being very open and then taking a critical look at what you've done. In this push-pull way, you get closer to something that is truly yours. In the opening stages, you're exploring an abstract thought and you wanting to express this visually. If your approach becomes too mind-orientated, then you're going to close down unconscious aspects of your creativity. But when you start to edit what you've done, you've got to start looking really critically at the selection of images. Then you engage the rational part of your brain. You are interrogating various factors, especially what is it that you are actually trying to show, and are you achieving that? You might find that some images work while others don't, and you have to be ruthless at this stage. Even if an image is strong, but it doesn't fit with your essay, then you must remove it from this selection so you can actually progress. The aesthetic might be off, it might just be a completely different picture. It could be expressing a whole different idea or thought. So slowly moving back and forth between openness and critical scrutiny, you find that you begin to mold a cohesive mood and aesthetic. So eventually your essay will begin to communicate, I suppose the word again is eloquently. What the series format offers photographers is to build layers of meaning. The individual images must have complexity and tell a small part of the whole story. Then, if you're engaging with your series on a multi-dimensional level, you discover all types of hyperlinks between the images. There might be sub-themes within the essay that you can draw out. I find that once I've developed my series to a certain point, I recognize links to other shots while I'm out photographing. Even if viewers of your work are not consciously informed about all of the complexity, there will be an awareness of depth and that you've engaged extensively with the subject. Sequencing is a whole creative exercise of its own. It can be straightforward or it can be as subtle and complex as you like. But the way that you present the photographs will determine how your audience engages with it. You're trying to entice viewers into connecting with the feeling or idea that you are engaging with. There are many ways of interconnecting images: tone, color, shape, theme, sub-theme, how energetic the images are, etc. Some photographers are aware right from the beginning how they want to present the work when it's completed, possibly in a gallery setting. Personally, I visualize work in book form, and this influences how I go about building an essay. Throughout the process, I start to become aware of possible sequencing links. It's obviously very difficult to get work published, but there's something really satisfying about developing a project to its final printed form. Even if you only produce one copy through a digital publisher like Blurb, it allows you to get a sense of completion to the project, and you can then free yourself up to move on to something else. The process of adding layers and depth to your work is a life undertaking. And like everything else, the more one works with an activity, the more complex your engagement becomes. I hope that there was something interesting for you in this video. Thanks for staying with me, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.